Welcome, my children, to the 2024 Ravens Forest Studios Halloween special. There will be ghosts, ghouls, zombies, drugs, witches, warlocks, cake, gay people, werewolves, product placement, and an all-new retrospective from Ravens Forest Studios. And please welcome your host, Jacob.
Yes, 'tis the season for all things horrifying, for it is Halloween season. And yes, while most people would go to parties, haunted houses, or even go in a ghost store, I am just going to dress up for the video and probably spend my night alone watching horror movies. At least I got a cool costume. And as is the spirit of the season, I feel like it's only appropriate to talk about something horror related, or at the very least, spooky. Last year, we talked about the classic stop-motion animated film, Nightmare Before Christmas, a personal favorite of mine. But this year, I feel like we should talk about something a tidge bit more obscure, but viewers of this channel might have seen it before, or at the very least, recognize my love for it. That being Kamen Rider. Also, I'm taking this off, like, God, man.
Rider! Shin!
Yes, Kamen Rider, a show that, fittingly enough, will forever haunt me day in and day out with its constant presence. Originally created by manga veteran Shotaro Ishinomori in 1971, the show follows heroes known as Kamen Riders, or Masked Riders if you want to go with the translated name. The original show focused on Takeshi Hongo, a motorcyclist and college student who was captured by the fascist group known as Shaco and turned into a cyborg in an attempt to make him their soldier. After escaping, he vows to destroy Shaco in the name of peace and justice. However, shortly afterwards, due to an onset injury by Hongo's actor, he was replaced by Hayato Ishimonji, a young photographer who, like Hongo, was also kidnapped and made into a cyborg by Shaco. But after saving him, he passed off the name of Kamen Rider to Ishimonji and later left to fight Shaco in Europe, before later returning in the show to team up with Ishimonji for the remainder of the show. What follows afterwards are a number of seasons that came as semi-sequels, but for the most part their own thing, with Riders and other side characters making cameos in later seasons to establish a continuity. But after the initial boom of the original show to 1975's Kamen Rider Stronger, the show would go on hiatus due to low viewership, making a brief return for Sky Rider, also known as Shin Kamen Rider, in 1979, along with Super 1 the following year. Then a TV special that attempted to be another revival of Kamen Rider, that being Z-Cross, in 1984. The final two series of the Showa era would be Black and its sequel, Black RX, from 1987 to 1989. Despite their efforts to revive the show over the years, even with the breaks in between, TV sales and toy sales weren't the greatest. As such, Toei, the company that produces Kamen Rider, focused their efforts more into the Super Sentai and Metal Heroes franchises, both of which sold better and, in the case of Sentai, had better ratings until they also began to decline later in the decade. But here's something funny about Ishinomori. You see, when he, his producer Toru Hirayama, and Toei was creating Kamen Rider, Shotaro Ishinomori wanted to focus a lot more on the horror elements of the show. In fact, when Kamen Rider was originally being developed, one of the visions he had for the show was in line from his earlier work on 1970's Skullman, a darker story based on a one-shot of the same name. While not being the grasshopper we know today, it would later become the basis for Kamen Rider along with inspiration from his other works like Cyborg 009 and Anshouka Kaido. This tone can actually be seen in the manga adaptation that Shotaro Ishinomori penned himself, which was more in line with his original view for the series. Multiple times, Shotaro Ishinomori would try to create Kamen Rider as close to how he originally wanted it, with varying attempts of success. Many of these ideas would later be reworked into other Rider shows, or in the case of things like, say, Kamen Rider Gaia, which was supposed to be a sequel manga released in 1991, it would later be reworked into a light novel released around 2004 after Shotaro Ishinomori's passing. But that idea for a more mature, adult Kamen Rider series, that piqued the interest of Toei.
After all, Kamen Rider's 20th anniversary is coming up soon, and the people who watched Kamen Rider as little kids, well, they're adults now. And it wouldn't be too far off to assume that they would like to see a more adult Rider series aimed towards them. And so, much like a zombie rising from its grave, Shin Kamen Rider Prologue was unleashed to the world in 1992, full of themes of global conspiracy, body horror, and boobies! This was a made-to-video film that was supposed to be a part of a series of other films entitled Shin Kamen Rider, hence why this has Prologue at the end of it. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, this just didn't get a sequel, which is all the more surprising since apparently it sold well. While unfortunately this film wouldn't get the direct sequels that it wanted, it would later be recontextualized as being a part of the Heisei film trilogy of this movie, Kamen Rider Zeto, and Kamen Rider J. Although, like I said, direct sequels to this movie just never came about despite apparent strong numbers sales-wise. But its lengths at being a more adult Kamen Rider project would mean that it joins the leagues of shows and movies like Hideki Anno's Shin Kamen Rider Black Sun, and Kamen Rider Amazons, respectively. But was its attempt at being a more mature take of Kamen Rider successful, or did it just fall flat on its face? Well, let's look back at Shin Kamen Rider Prologue and find out.
We begin with scenes of a mysterious creature killing a woman. This creature is then stopped by the police after killing some more people, only for them to fall victim to him. However, this is abruptly stopped as we cut to our main character, Shin, waking up from a dream, and his girlfriend and nurse, Asuka, attending to him. These two are currently in the project together at the ISS, Institute of Super Science, as Shin volunteered to be a part of an experiment meant to aid in the cure of cancer and AIDS. The ones conducting this experiment are Doctors Katsumori, the father of Shin, and Onizuka.
Fun fact, if Shin's actor looks at all familiar to those who watch Ultraman, then you may know him as being the human host of Ultraman Hikari and Ultraman Mebius. I just wanted to mention Ultraman.
There are 3 stages of development, with Shin about to be on level 3. His father refuses to attempt level 3 since it's too dangerous, but Onizuka says, in one of the hardest lines of the entire franchise,
神に対するね。そして今こそ勝利する時なんです我々が。
And with a line like that, it only makes me want to trust him more.
We are also introduced to Iroh Himoru, the head of the ISS, and Gushima, his right-hand man and head of security. Himoru invited an observation team to witness the tests, including one played by Shitaro Ishinomori, oddly enough. But as it's found out, they were actually only posing to be an observation team, actually being there to spy on the ISS and its parent company, a group simply known as Organization. Later on, Shin is training at the gym, and his friend, Takura Yuki, catches them here, urging him to leave the experiment as his father has unfortunately killed other people when trying to do this experiment beforehand. But Shin refuses, as he wants to help his father.
The trio of Ai, Shin, and Yuki definitely reminds me of the original Kamen Rider series, particularly when both writers were a part of the show, and also the supporting cast of Kamen Rider Girls. If you want a more recent and modern example, then my mind goes to Kamen Rider Fize's trio of Mari, Takumi, and Kentaro. But that's only because I just recently watched Fize. Either way, I kinda wish we got to see more of this trio as a cohesive unit, as unfortunately much of the focus is really just on Shin and Ai. Yuki is barely in the movie. He's only in this scene and another scene, which is quite a shame because I feel like if he was in the film more, it could have been really interesting, especially because of things that I'll discuss later on in the video.
Shin picks up a newspaper and reads about the murderers. Thinking it was him due to the visions from before, what the fuck is that? Anyways, after that thing, Shin runs off, with a mysterious woman following him as he questions just what the hell is going on. Later on, while out on a jog, he sees Onizuka entering a shady building and decides to follow him, in which he sees Onizuka's battle station, I guess?
So this where he does his, late night Discord calls? Don't keep your candles that close to your monitor, dude. You're gonna start a fire.
Onizuka is doing some experiments on himself while Shin watches, feeling some sort of pain as Onizuka does as well, and fittingly enough, a group raids the base. Shin is knocked out, and the monster from before appears, killing most of the SWAT team. Shin wakes up and instantly assumes that he was responsible, somehow, after also seeing the attack from the monster's point of view despite being out for all of it. Shin confronts Onizuka the morning after, in which the Mad Doctor explains that he has been conducting experiments on insects, with himself focusing on the telepathy of grasshoppers.
Sure, let's go with that.
Onizuka's plan is to create a race of these grasshopper and human hybrids, with himself as the ruler, meaning he's been turning both himself and, by proxy, Shin into these hybrids. To add to the horror, when Shin's father enters in the room, Onizuka tells them they all work for the organization, and all of his research is for them as well. Shin returns to the place from the night before and sees everything is missing, but the lady from before is back. Her name is Sarah Fukumaki, a CIA agent who is tracking the organization and Shin. Sarah tells him that she wants to help Shin destroy the organization, but then Gushima appears and he is out to kill her and Shin. She fights him off, but after a funny-looking jump, Sarah thinks he is dead, only for him to survive like the badass he is. Shin reveals to his friends what has been happening to himself, but both refuse to believe it. However, Shin tells them he is a murderer and, for their safety, he must stay away from them.
いつまたおかしくなって君らを襲うかもしれないんだ。だから来るな。俺に使うな。
I want to highlight something really quick about Shin's actor, and that's how good he is at expressing his character. Now, admittedly, I thought his line readings were okay at best. Nothing horrible, it's just a problem with the dialogue in question not exactly being what I feel like it's trying to accomplish. A lot of it feels a bit too generic for my liking. But his facial expressions are on another level. A lot of it conveys just a general sense of fear and anger over what he's turning into. That uncertainty of what's going on with him. He nails it really well, and honestly, if he just had better dialogue to work with, I think it would have been the strongest performance of this film. I just think he does a really great job at the facial expressions alone.
Right afterwards, Ai catches Shin in the pool, and they go out for a swim, with her begging him to have faith in her. All while both are naked, and we get to see boobies! For all like 5 seconds. It turns out that Onizuka was committed for his wacko theories about creating an army of bug dudes. This comes from the orders of Hiromu, and he is now forcing Shin's father to continue the experiments by trapping him in the ISS headquarters, and sending a sample of his work in the form of Onizuka. Later, when Shin is trying to search around the base to find more about organization, he senses that his fellow bugman is in danger. As a result of this, he follows Goshima and the organization members that are transferring Onizuka. But surprise! Sarah and her group chase them down and cause them to crash. After surrounding Onizuka, Shin's senses begin to go crazy. Sarah's team shoots a rocket at the truck containing Onizuka to kill him. And holy fuck, it's Bug Satan! It turns out that not only was Shin's senses going apeshit, was actually Onizuka calling out for help, but it's revealed to the audience that those murders from before weren't Shin's fault, but instead because of Onizuka being a psycho.
Now this does beg the question. How the hell does this work? I know Kamen Rider and Science haven't exactly had the best relationship, especially since one clearly does not give a fuck about the other, but this is just kinda perplexing. Not to the point where I think it seriously hurts the film, just something I feel like pointing out. Like, seriously, how does screwing with your DNA allow you to see somebody else's point of view while sleeping and also be able to, like, mentally communicate with each other?
And so, after nearly 50 minutes, we see our Kamen Rider, in truly one hell of a special effects demonstration. This is the highlight of the film, folks. Look at this transformation. It's eerie, bone-chilling. The animatronics look so good, and you can see the visible tail in Shin's eyes as he transforms, matched with that haunting scream of the transformed Onizuka as he slowly dies, and the amazing score! Right after Shin transforms, Goshima attacks, transforming into his own terrifying monster form. And our first fight finally happens. It's a good fight, but the actual action isn't too exciting. What makes it is the music and, more importantly, the use of lighting. Cinematography in this movie is really not too different than a typical episode of TV, but damn does this film know how to use some effective lighting. I love how everything is presented in the dark. It almost adds to the creepiness of everything. Before the feds can try and attack him, Shin escapes, and confronts Ai in the transformed state, with Ai running to him, saddened over the fact that she helped turn her lover into a monster.
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
The next day, Seiwa is on a call with the higher-ups, telling them that they shouldn't kill Shin, but at the very least capture him, especially since he helped them. But they refuse, telling her to kill Shin, which she agrees. Ai and Shin meet up the morning after, and it's revealed that the whole thing wasn't to prevent diseases, but instead to make, and then distribute, soldiers, living weapons. Also, that means Onizuka's whole turning himself into a grasshopper thing wasn't planned by the Shady Group, instead just done because he wanted to, meaning this man sabotaged a big Shady Group's plan for military contractors to focus on his bug fetish. She also knew what organization was doing, mentioning that they weren't supposed to make level 3 soldiers, only done for reference data. They had no idea it would alter his body like this, thus she feels responsible for his suffering. In an attempt to fix the mess that she and Pulp created, Ai runs back to the lab and pleads for them to reverse all of this. But she gets captured, and it's revealed that she is pregnant with Shin's mutant child. What?! What do you mean, mutant child?!
君が眠っている間に検査した。間違いない。
So the pool scene got her pregnant? How the fuck does that work? Look, I'm going to be able to forgive them for whatever the fuck they attempted to do with the grasshopper communication thing and, you know, calling out to your other grasshopper brethren, because, like, whatever, that's, like, horror stuff, but, like, how the fuck can you conceive a child just by spending time in a pool naked with somebody else? Like, how the fuck does that work? I draw the line at fucking mutant pregnancy!
So the baby calls out to Shin to save both Ai and his father. The baby also managed to get them out with an energy blast.
Whatever, I don't care.
And they manage to make their way out of the cell as Shin makes his way back to the ISS. After busting in and meeting up with the two, Sarah rushes in with her group in an attempt to take out everyone. Hiromu attempts to kill the three, but when he aims his gun for Shin, Ai takes the bullet for him. Enraged by her death, Shin transforms into Kamen Rider and ruthlessly kills Hiromu. Then, right afterwards, Kushima appears and they have a fight, making a mess of the building around them. The fight is probably the best one in the film, which isn't saying much since the last one barely lasted 3 minutes, but it has some cool moments that show us what Shin is capable to do. Like jumping really high, regenerating his body, and also decapitating the man. Shin and his father escape, but they are then cornered by Sarah's team, who says she has to kill them for the sake of world peace. However, a helicopter operated by her organization comes in, attacking everyone and capturing Shin's father. Shin attempts to save him, but he is then captured as well. All seems bleak until Sarah uses her trusty RPG to shoot down the helicopter, crashing it into a building. It's unknown if Shin's father survived the crash, but in the final scene, we see Shin carrying the lifeless body of Ai as he walks down a sewer, seeing the image of his child guiding him. Now on a mission to destroy the organization, while being on the run from Sarah and the CIA, fade to black.
The best way I can describe Shin Kamen Rider is compromised. It clearly is trying to set up things for future installments, and aimed at trying to build up this mystery of what's going on with Shin and the organization behind it, but because a lot of people come to this movie for, the Kamen Riders, it kind of leaves fans in the dust over what they want. It's this slow burn, which I did kind of enjoy, but I can understand why some people felt kind of frustrated that it took us 40 minutes before anything of significance really happens. Again, that's kind of a problem when your big appeal of it is the Kamen Riders. It's like a Godzilla movie that barely shows Godzilla. Ignoring that one.
When I was looking up other reviews to see what people had to say, that's what a lot of people brought up, the pacing. And while I personally found it not as bad as people said it was, I can see why other viewers would feel that way. Namely because, to be honest, not a lot happens until we get to the forced transformation. It keeps setting up the mystery of what's happening to Shin, even if that mystery is kinda pointless when the audience can clearly see he's not the one killing people. But really, everything from Onizuka's reveal to Shin's transformation could be shortened or just left out entirely and reworked like the gunfight with Gushima. I do understand what they were trying to do here, however, having the audience guess just what exactly is up with the experiments and organization, but the end result is one that takes too long before we get what the audience came for. To give an example of the kind of pacing done well in Kamen Rider, let's look at the first 2 episodes of Kamen Rider W. That gave us a perfect introduction to the show's themes, its characters, the world around them, while also leaving a handful of things open, like the origins of Philip, and barely showing the main villains to keep the viewers interested. Now yes, those are 2 episodes of a TV show compared to a movie, but with a little reworking you can definitely use that extra time to your benefit. For example, why not show more of Shin and his friends, especially his girlfriend? Now for Yuki, I can see why. I get the feeling had this gone on for more than one video, Yuki would have either been his right-hand man or maybe a Kamen Rider Nego situation. A rider being a former enemy turned ally. But I feel like it's just a missed opportunity to showcase these guys being, friends with each other. Just adding a scene or 2 with these guys hanging out goes a long way than just saying these guys are good friends. We don't need that for Shin and his father because, well, I get the film does a good enough job showing them working together and when Shin attempts to rescue him in the final moments, but I just wish we got that for what looked like to have been the main trio. But even that's kind of a bust because I, get shot in the end. And the main reason I'm so hung up on that is because, well, focusing on the main trio of characters, or at the very least side characters, is an important aspect of Kamen Rider since the beginning. Hell, this film is already like a reimagining of the original Kamen Rider. We have a shady group trying to play God, a personal relationship with one of the doctors and the student, a federal agent being involved, a man who has no idea what his body is going through or how to control it. Even Yuki mentions how Shin wanted to become a professional motorcyclist, just like Hongo in the original series. And sure, you can argue that Shin being mostly alone for possible future installations would have been cool. After all, he initially viewed it as some kind of curse, like he was a danger to other people. And there's a lot you can do with that, like him trying to reject other people's help and viewing his ability to transform into Kamen Rider more like a burden than a gift. Maybe have him slowly realize over time that he needs that relationship with other people in order to help fight organization. And I will say, the way to depict it could have been a lot better. There's just not a lot of scenes of him questioning what's going on with him, in my opinion. But I can admire the attempt. I got a lot of vibes of classic werewolf movies from this. Speaking of transformations, man, the special effects work. It's the stuff of beauty. And you can thank special effects director Nobu Yajima. Now, to Kamen Rider fans, you might not know him, as he only seemed to have worked on this movie along with other projects like Super 1, J, Black, and Black RX. But if you like Showa to early Heisei work, then you definitely are more familiar with his special effects work on other shows, an on-again, off-again relationship with Super Sentai, mainly working on projects like Live Man, Bioman, and even early entries like Jaka and Battle Fever J, but he also worked on some other classic tokusatsu, like Giant Robo, or Johnny Sacco and his flying robot for the boomers out there, Tetsugen 17, or Brain 17 as I called it for whatever reason when I was originally recording this, Message from Space, Spectre-Man, even a handful of Metal Heroes projects. Hell, he even worked on the Toei Spider-Man series, Ultraman's Toro and Leo, Kakaido, and it's only scratching the surface of his work. And my god, just every suit looks scary as hell. He really put his A-game into this. Shin is this terrifying, mutated grasshopper that looks like it's gonna tear someone's guts out in a second. Gushima is like a robot from hell. All that exposed skin and muscle makes it look like something I haven't ever seen in a Kamen Rider project beforehand. And the transformation scenes! Look at these animatronics! God, if I was watching this on a small CRT with the lights off in the middle of the night, this would scare the shit out of me. It's just frustrating because we don't see much of either, and the fights featuring both are perfectly fine. The last one has some interesting moments, but they both don't last that long. Plus, I feel like with someone like Shin, I wanted them to be a lot more thorough in terms of their movement and combat style. My mind immediately goes to how Amazon moved in his fights. He was still fought more or less like a traditional Kamen Rider, but not only was it still relatively different, they had little things like the grunts he made or the hand movements do a lot to make him stand out from his fellow masked men. Plus, Amazon can get fucking brutal. Look at those attacks, man. And that was made for children. Holy shit! The camera work and the visuals outside of that are pretty basic, unfortunately. Well, I will commend them for being able to achieve the occasional pretty cool looking shot or two, especially when it comes to the film's use of lighting and some of the more dramatic scenes. Nothing outside of the fights are truly special. I felt like if they leaned on more of the whole movie feel, this could have really given us a unique take on Kamen Rider, but I also found the acting to be serviceable at best. I never really got the feeling of Hiromu being that threatening, but you can argue that's kind of the point. Especially since he's supposed to be presenting himself as an average businessman. Onizuka is a standout, but his work is pretty sidelined early on. I like my Mad Doctor trope, and if they would have kept him alive and made him go all hammy, he would have been a better villain in my opinion. Shin's performance is probably the best out of everyone here. His facial expressions and body language really do the talking for him when it comes to him trying to comprehend what's going on to his body, but his line reads are simply okay. They aren't horrible, and I wouldn't argue they're bad by any means. They're perfectly fine, and sometimes they're actually pretty good, but I have a feeling it has more to do with the dialogue that he has to work with, if anything.
And also, that's something I kind of forgot to mention. The dialogue in this movie is just kind of average at best and forgettable at worst. Nothing egregious by any means. I wasn't really that, bothered by it. But for something like Kamen Rider, which usually has really strong character writing, it's very strange to see them turn out something like this. Sure, there's the cool line or two, but that's about it.
And then there's the plot. They tried. They honestly tried to do whatever the hell they wanted to do with this plot. I mentioned before, a lot of it reads like the original Kamen Rider, but through the lens of an edgy 90s film, but man, was I confused at points watching this. The telepathy feature was something that I only really got after my second viewing because while it was foreshadowed a little bit early on, nobody ever directly mentions Shin being able to speak to others or even sense them. And how the hell does the baby thing work? It's not like they did any kind of experiments on Ai or anything. They just sat in a pool together and that caused the baby to be like... Again, no, that's not how it works! We don't get to know much about organization or its members besides what's revealed here, which is fine by me since I feel like they revealed a decent amount enough here, but you can tell they were really hoping that this was going to go into a sequel to because next to nothing is said outside of that. There's also the matter of how you can argue Shin's father should have questioned if it was morally ethical to not only operate on his son, but to do it in the first place. But then again, this is kind of a thing with Ishinomori works. By the way, am I the only one who finds it funny the bug religious cult element got dropped as soon as it was revealed to be Onizuka's little pet project? I wanted more of that. I'm dead serious.
And that's it. Unfortunately, the film didn't take off like Toei wanted, and so the proposed sequels never came to fruition. And while we would get 2 other Kamen Rider films that were much better received and well remembered than Shin Kamen Rider Prologue, Shin himself wasn't really remembered in the best of ways. He would show up in cameos in future Rider films, but outside of that, and a manga here or there, Shin has been pretty much left in the dust. Hell, they've been reusing the same suit for him since this movie, and you can tell that they need to make him a new suit because holy shit, look at him. Happy Halloween, everyone! And remember, if you want to raise an army of bug people to take over the world via a weird religious cult, make sure you have a good reason beforehand and don't let your boss know. Happy hunting!
And you don't seem to.
Hello there, and thank you for watching the end of this review of Shin Kamen Rider Prologue. If you like the video so much that you want to see what I do and watch other videos like it, then please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video around, show it some love, whatever you kids do. If you want to see my mad ramblings and other assorted acts, then I have a Twitter, a Tumblr, and a letterbox that you can follow down in the description. And if you like it so much that you want to financially support me, or at the very least give me a tip, then my Ko-Fi is also in the description as well. I hope, this sort of is a relatively good introduction to Kamen Rider. It's not the best pick as an introductory movie to the franchise, or introduction to anything to the franchise, because it's so radically different. But, I just really like Kamen Rider, and I'm surprised it took me this long to actually talk about it. I did a review of Dai Shako, which was a movie from Kamen Rider Decade, years ago, but that review was shit, and it was terrible. I'm probably going to be posting a lot of updates on YouTube in the time in between, but most of my activity can probably be seen on Twitter and the like, so I highly suggest you guys follow me there. And that's pretty much it. So this is Ravens Forest Studios.